What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by you guys here at youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check me out anywhere you get your podcast. Find all my written work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We are 24 hours away from the 2025 NFL Draft in Green Bay, Wisconsin, a place that I've gotten reports all week. Hey, how's it out there? How's the weather? Heard about these things called house bars. Don't know what they are, but excited to one day be able to check them out. Apparently, people just have bars in their house that are open to the public at any time in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Can't say that I'm surprised. Will say that I'm excited for tomorrow to hear all the stories that have been told that will continue to be told. And then obviously, when the board shakes out and the Tennessee Titans are on the clock with the first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, where it goes from there, because I think this is the first time in a long time where there is no consensus. This guy's going here, this guy's going here, this guy's going here. Cam Ward's going to Tennessee. Besides that, nobody has any idea what's going on. We are completely guessing, as we do with most things, most times. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, they sit at 21. And for right now, they're thinking about staying there. But that could change. We're diving into quarterback trades because that is the news that broke this morning. Wide receiver trades because that is the news that broke this afternoon. And then how the Dallas Cowboys, maybe the Houston Texans, the Chicago Bears, all looking to make noise, all looking to make trades during the NFL Draft, and the Pittsburgh Steelers sitting right there at 21, open for business as they look to decide on a number of positions with their first-round pick. As always, shout out to our members, shout out to our super chatters. If you got questions, toss them in the chat at the end of the show. We'll dive into as many of them as we possibly can. With that said, let's kick it off with the news that I don't think anybody wants to continue to talk about, but that we have to continue to talk about because, well, when I first reported it back in January at the end of the season that the Pittsburgh Steelers had some interest in moving on from George Pickens this offseason, it came with a bunch of no chance, not going to happen, no way. Okay. I sat back and said, I will listen and I will continue and I will not push, although I think I did push the narrative a little bit. And Omar Khan spoke at the league meetings. And immediately my mindset flipped. Okay, I've been hearing what I've been hearing, but Omar Khan is being very straightforward. And this is not once, but twice that the Pittsburgh Steelers have said they have no intentions of moving on from George Pickens. And then at the pre-draft press conference, at that point, my mind is already made up. George Pickens might stay here. Omar Khan says it again, that they have no intentions of trading George Pickens, that they aren't even thinking about trading George Pickens, that they want DK Metcalf and George Pickens to be the dynamic duo with, well, if you ask Shedeur Sanders. Awesome. Except for the fact that today, this afternoon, Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports came out and said that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not expected to keep George Pickens, that nobody expects around the league for the Pittsburgh Steelers to pay both George Pickens and DK Metcalf, who they handed a $150 million deal to this offseason after giving up a second-round pick, and that the consensus, the sentiment around the league is that the Steelers are going to move on from their 24-year-old receiver, that they're going to get something for him, and that maybe that something is a second-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's less. We'll find out. But he also said this, that, quote, Pickens is one intriguing trade name to watch. Pittsburgh has taken and made calls on the talented wide receiver who's now extension eligible. After paying Metcalf, league sources are skeptical the Steelers will pay two wide receivers. I don't care what the skepticism is around the league. I've heard a lot of the same skepticism. I've heard a lot of the Steelers are moving on from George Pickens. They're most likely going to trade him. But I've heard Omar Khan say it twice now that they want to keep him. and they want to figure out a way to keep him. And I looked at it and said, I think they do want to keep him, but they understand that eventually things could change and that George Pickens having an issue with them not extending him is going to be what transpires. That's how we get from point A to point B of Steelers not wanting to trade him, but having to trade him. Unless the Steelers are already interested in it and they're already making calls. And Omar Khan is saying this just to save face because truthfully, we could sit here and say, listen to Omar Khan, listen to Omar Khan, listen to Omar Khan. But in the same sentence, most people would say, well, how do you believe the Steelers lie to people all the time? They're just constantly lying, smoke screens. If you're following that logic, the logic that you can't believe everything that you're told, and that teams obviously have to say things in front of the media that they would not say because league sources and teams, representatives, head coaches and general managers tend to be on different wavelengths. They tend to, sources are giving out information. They're excited to give out information. They're giving out certain information to skew a narrative in one way or another. GMs and head coaches are giving information to the media to skew information one way or another. In this one, maybe it's to save face with George Pickens in case a trade does not happen. Because maybe they don't get a trade on draft night. Maybe they don't even come close to a trade on draft night. And they need to make sure that Saturday morning or Saturday night, whenever, Sunday morning, George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers are still cool. Things are chilling. Everybody's in a good spot. No worries. George wasn't getting traded. No chance. No chance. We didn't want anything to do with the George Pickens trade. That was all rumors. We've shut them down twice. Maybe that's what it is. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying maybe. I'm just tossing out the idea because you have to toss out the idea. If you're talking and you're listening, well, maybe that idea makes some sense. But the question is, what would get them to that next level? What would they trade for George Pickens to actually make this happen Thursday night? Because that's when it would happen, most likely Thursday into Friday. No chance they're going past the second round. I'll start there. And if they do go past the second round, if they end up with a third-round pick for George Pickens, Omar Khan has lost. Steelers have lost that trade. They are losers in that trade scenario because by no means should the Pittsburgh Steelers be getting anything less than a second-round pick. I think they could get a second-rounder. I think it's very interesting to have conversations like, if the Bears want to trade out of the second round and somehow Emeka Egbuka is still sitting there at pick 10 in the second round. If the New York Giants are moving up and the team that they traded with, whoever that is, wants to trade back again and Emeka Egbuka is right there. Or Matthew Golden, who I don't think is going to be there, is right there. Or Jaden Higgins is right there. Or Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, right there. And the Steelers are saying, oh, it's time to make a move for the future. I could see it happening. I could also say that coming into today, I did not see that happening. I saw it on the table, but I didn't see the likelihood of it. The Steelers actively making calls, which Schultz walked this back a little bit and said, he's not actually on the trade block. We know he's not on the trade block, but that doesn't mean teams aren't calling. Everybody calls. There are constant conversations. It's like the Trevor Lawrence thing. I doubt that the Steelers called and said, hey, what do you want for Trevor Lawrence? But I don't doubt that somebody somewhere had a conversation and casually brought up, what would you give for Trevor Lawrence in a situation where if they said, oh, a fourth round pick, the Steelers wouldn't actually make a phone call. If it's the same situation here, all it takes is that one right offer to come in for the Steelers to say, all right, we're good. Let's make a move. Let's pull the trigger. George is gone. Do I think it's the right move? No. I don't. I truthfully don't. I think if you could keep George Pickens, it makes a lot of sense. I think if you could replace George Pickens with an Emeka Egbuka, with a Jaden Higgins, maybe, just maybe, I'd be on board with the Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart, but I don't think I would be. But if you could find another wide receiver, you could convince me that it's okay. You could convince me that that move makes sense long-term for the Pittsburgh Steelers, even if it's setting them back. And to be honest with you, I'm okay with making the move as long as you have a replacement and not worrying about this season. I don't think that George Pickens is the difference maker between a Super Bowl or not when Mason Rudolph is your quarterback. I just don't. But what I do think is if it's DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin, and somehow you end up with Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers, okay, well, now you just signed a quarterback, went and got a quarterback after you messed up the wide receiver thing again. Doesn't make any sense. I'm not on board with trading George Pickens unless the situation is near perfect. I think near perfect could happen. I do think it's on the table. It's possible. I wouldn't do it otherwise. The Steelers seem to have some interest. Again, I haven't explored that sense. It was constantly for months, or I guess 2-3 months. Yeah, they're open to it. They're definitely open to it. They're ready to, if the right situation presents itself, move on. I mean, I heard that back in January, the day, 2 days after the season ended. That's when I heard it. Seems like we're here and nothing's changed except for the fact that the Steelers would love for this to happen, or would love for them to keep George, but they're not certain that it's going to happen, and they have to protect themselves. That's how I'm looking at it. They have to protect themselves where they're at right now. There's another trade. George Pickens isn't the only one. And this one started the day off. This one was we have come so far. we have gone every way possible. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have looked in every direction they could possibly look in to say, we need a quarterback. We have to find a quarterback. Our quarterback has to be out there somewhere, and it's not Mason Rudolph. I think that most likely outcome of the Steelers quarterback situation is 2 days before before training camp, the Steelers sign Aaron Rodgers, putting one final stamp on the FU to Mason Rudolph. That's how I view it. And that's what if you asked me today what I predict happens at quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers over the next 3 months, I would say Aaron Rodgers signs the week before training camp. Big FU to Mason Rudolph, and the Steelers go into the season with Aaron as their guy after hyping up Mason all spring long, because that's what they're going to do. But Diana Rossini of The Athletic tends to think that come Saturday afternoon, that might not be the case. That Aaron Rodgers might be off the table, that the Pittsburgh Steelers might be moved in a different direction, another veteran direction, a direction that I will be very honest with you, I am very against for the Pittsburgh Steelers. She said, quote this in her NFL Give It All Away mailbag today, quote, the Browns, Steelers, and possibly Vikings. How have we gotten here with the Vikings again? Could be involved in a Kirk Cousins trade. Minnesota is looked at as the least likely scenario given its preference for J.J. McCarthy, and that Cousins would need to sign off on a trade he is involved in. It's believed that Cousins would be against any trade that involves sending him to a situation involving a young quarterback similar to the situation he faced in Atlanta last year. I think the Vikings are just being tossed out there constantly just to keep their head in the loop. Just to, hey, we're here. We love JJ, but it's the Steelers with George Pickens. We love George. But if you want to call an offer as a first round pick, we're not going to hang up the phone on you. We're going to at least talk it out. That's what the Vikings seem like they're doing here with JJ McCarthy. We love JJ. But make sure that our name's in on the Kirk thing and on the Aaron Rodgers thing, and doesn't leave the Aaron Rodgers thing. When it comes to the Steelers and Kirk Cousins, I haven't heard that there's a bunch of interest in Kirk Cousins in the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll start there. I think that's the most important part. I have not heard that the Steelers are sitting around saying we have to make a trade for Kirk. I have heard that the Steelers are still very confident that they're going to end up with Aaron Rodgers at some point. That's still my guess, but they have no idea because they haven't spoken to him since the Pat McAfee show, and they have no idea what's going on. They knew everything that happened. They knew the inner circle, dealing with a really terrible situation, trying to handle his personal life outside of football, not totally sure how it's going to shake down, but still confident that when it's all said and done, Aaron's going to want to come back to football and play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's where the Steelers stand. But they're also very open to figuring this thing out. That's the other side of this, is Aaron makes a lot of sense until he doesn't. And the Steelers have hit a point where they're at a crossroads where they're running out of options. And Joe Flacco didn't make more sense than Aaron Rodgers. Carson Wentz doesn't make more sense than Aaron Rodgers. Russell Wilson didn't make more sense than Aaron Rodgers. Mason Rudolph doesn't make more sense than Aaron Rodgers. Maybe Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart does, but we'll get there tomorrow night. For today, maybe it's Kirk Cousins. And maybe Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons finally hit a point on Saturday afternoon where the Falcons say, all right, we're ready. We're ready to move on. Let's figure this thing out. Let's get rid of you. Let's move you somewhere for something. I will say this. I do not view Kirk Cousins as a Super Bowl quarterback. I never did view Kirk Cousins as a Super Bowl quarterback. I don't sit here and say if the Pittsburgh Steelers, I will say the Pittsburgh Steelers could somehow, in a very slim chance, but it's there, doors cracked at least, pull it off with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think it's cracked with Mason Rudolph almost at all. I don't think it's cracked with Kirk Cousins almost at all. I just don't think you pull it off with Kirk Cousins. Super Bowl, Kirk Cousins don't seem to mesh. Doesn't seem to be two words that should follow each other. But the Pittsburgh Steelers might look at it and say, what's the price tag? On day 3 of the draft, it better be 4th or 5th round pick minimum. What are we paying for Kirk Cousins? 3rd day of the draft, it better be $10 million. And if they're going to give him up for everything but $10 million this season, maybe you got to pay him next year, but $10 million this season and a 4th or a 5th round pick, maybe this year, maybe next year, I wouldn't rule out the Steelers thinking about it. I wouldn't rule out the Steelers having conversations about it. I wouldn't rule out the Steelers saying, you know what, let's do it. Bring in Kirk Cousins. I wouldn't be shocked by it. Do I think they're actively pursuing him? No, but I also think that they fully understand they don't have a quarterback and they need to find a quarterback. Everybody needs a quarterback. You can't play football without a quarterback. The Steelers need to go out and get one. And they think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but I'm telling you, GMs talk around the league constantly. There's always conversation happening. What do you want for this guy? Hey, let's talk this guy. What about this? What are you interested in here? What about the first round? What positions are you looking at? So that I can make sure that, you know, I am also looking at those positions. I have to understand these things. What are they looking at? All these conversations happen constantly. If Atlanta is floating out there saying Kirk's available and we'll give him up cheap, Omar's going to make a phone call. Art Rooney's going to say, go get a veteran. Mike Tomlin's going to say, this is better than Mason Rudolph. I'm not saying I agree with any of it. I'm just saying that's what might happen. And in a war room where you're moving fast and decisions need to be made, and Shedeur Sanders is off the board at 9, and Jackson Dart's off the board because the New York Giants just jumped you at 20. Well, looks like you need a quarterback. Maybe that quarterback is, again, Kirk Cousins. I'd give up a 5th round pick. If you told me you had to trade for Kirk Cousins, if you told me you had to make it happen, I'd give up a 5th round pick and I'd pay no more than $15 million this year. I think they could afford $15 million without it even affecting a single thing. You don't even have to worry about it. It's barely on your pocketbook. You're good. Like there's nothing there that moves the needle at all. 5th round pick for Kirk Cousins is nothing. You could take a shot on a veteran quarterback for a 5th round pick. You could do that. That's all I'd give up for Kirk Cousins. But the Steelers are in. To some degree, the Steelers are in on this situation where they need a quarterback. And I'm telling you, Kirk Cousins, where we stand right now, they might be that quarterback. They might be that quarterback. It's crazy to sound or to say, but they might be that quarterback. Now, how do you replace him? And I think this is interesting. How do you replace, if you trade George Pickens, and how do you go about replacing Aaron Rodgers if that's what this Kirk Cousins thing is a move on from Aaron Rodgers? I think the best way to go about it is the NFL draft, but if you can't do it in a draft, what if you traded the New England Patriots for a wide receiver named Keyshawn Bout, who had his trouble, who isn't super duper impressive, but also comes with some upside, who just turned 23 years old, who had 500 plus yards in a bad offense last year with no receiving help, and maybe, just maybe, has some upside that's more than a lot of names in this draft. Not Matthew Golden, not Emeka Ibuka, not McMillan, not Jaden Higgins, not Trey Harris, not those names. I'm talking third, fourth round names where at this point you're just moving on anyways. What if you went that direction? Kayshon Boutte is a name that I think makes some sense because you're not going to give up anything for the guy. You're just going to go give up a 5th round pick or something, maybe a 4th round pick, but I would imagine it's less than that, and go get a wide receiver that's very young, that has nothing attached to him, and that the Pittsburgh Steelers could look at and say, this is better than nothing. If they're going to make the trade, again, I'm not trading George Pickens. In my hypothetical draft in my head, I'm not trading George Pickens. But if you do, maybe he's a name to watch. Maybe you go out and get a young dude who at LSU tore it up. And I think if he, came out a little bit stronger at the combine and at the draft and the whole situation at the end of his NFL career or LSU career, things would be way better. But he's a guy that you could say had a good year in New England, and they're now looking to move on. Maybe go get him for nothing. Maybe go get Kirk Cousins for nothing too and have an offense filled with players that you traded 6th round picks for. Is it going to work? No. But why not? Why not make a shot? That's the news of the day. The big ones. George Pickens on the market. Why? I understand it. I do. But I wouldn't do it. Kirk Cousins wouldn't do it at all. If you are somehow going to convince me to say yes to it, okay, let's have a conversation. But I'm not calling you. I'm not calling you unless that offer starts with, I don't know, a 5 and most of the contract. That's where we stand right now as the Pittsburgh Steelers head into Thursday and the NFL draft. There's a lot more that'll emerge over the next couple of days. The Houston Texans are looking to trade. The Chicago Bears are looking to trade. The Steelers are not going to trade up. I'm going to tell you that right now. They're not going to trade up in the draft. And if they do, that would be the one move I'd be surprised about, is the Steelers moving up in the NFL draft. I see them moving back if a trade presents itself. The Houston Texans want to move back. I could see that happening. I don't think that you're going to get more than maybe a 4th round pick, maybe a 3rd round pick to move back to the Houston Texans unless you give up something along with your 1st round pick. But I do think that's on the table. And we're 24 hours away. I'll give you my 1st round pick tomorrow, but I do expect some noise to. This is what I've heard over the last 12-ish, 14 since I've woke up this morning, because today's the day. Like, you make all your calls throughout the week, but you're covering one team. I'm not a national analyst. Like, you hear a bunch of stuff, but you want to understand what's happening with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And yesterday I was a little bit busy covering the Pittsburgh Steelers. Today, okay, all this is happening. What are the conversations? Who can I reach out to figure this out, to figure that out? The general consensus around the league is that this is about to be chaotic, that it has been way too calm. It's the calm before the storm. Things are about to get real crazy real fast, and trades are going to start flying in, and people are going to start moving all about because there isn't that rock solid set of top tier talent, and everybody can move to different positions to say, all right, we're cool with this guy because there's not really a significant gap between this guy and that guy. That's what the NFL believes. And I think the Steelers are going to be involved there. I do think the Steelers are going to be heavily involved in going to get their guy, but also being very settled and humble moving back to find a different guy. That's what I expect from the Steelers. This one's going to be a wild one. We'll have more tomorrow, but for right now, George Pickens and Kirk Cousins apparently are the names to watch, and it is nuts to me that they are the names to watch. Kirk on Saturday, George, I would say, on Friday. The draft starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. You got all day to figure something out. I don't think that's going to happen on Thursday, if it does at all, which, again, I'm not shooting for the stars saying George Pickens is going to be gone. That's awesome for the Steelers. I do not think it works out in their favor unless they have a clear-cut plan to replace him, which they might. And to trade George Pickens to essentially land Emeka Ibuka ain't that bad. It ain't that bad. You could figure that out from there. To essentially land Jaden Higgins ain't terrible. Like, you've set yourself up long-term with another shot, essentially. Cheaper one. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. All right. With that said, that's everything on my agenda. Those are the two big headlines, plus what I'm hearing heading into the NFL draft tomorrow. We're going to finish off the show the same way I do every single day. I'm going to start answering your guys' questions. So toss them in the chat. But first, going to take a quick break. I'll be right back after this.
Pittsburgh, this one's for you. From the voices behind all Steelers talk comes black and gold apparel, your go-to for bold, fan-driven merch that reps the city, the Steelers, and everything in between. Whether you bleed black and gold or just love that Pittsburgh grit, we've got something for you. It's more than a podcast. It's a community. And thanks to your support, we're proud to bring the passion from our mics to your closets. Gear up, stand out, and show the world what real fans look like. Shop now at blackandgoldapparel.myshopify.com.
All righty. Shout out to all of our members. Shout out to all our super chatters. If you got questions, toss them in the chat. I'll get to as many of them as I possibly can before I head out of here. We're going to start with our boy, Dominic. Hypothetical. TJ to the Carolina Panthers for pick 8 and 57. Draft Walter Nolan at 8. Woo. We are real high on Walter Nolan. Golden, Abuka, or Hampton at 21. Milroe and Caleb Johnson at 57. What you think? I think you are shooting for the stars if you are trying to get Walter Nolan at number 8. I don't think I'd be there. Now, I will say that the TJ for these picks aren't terrible. A first and a second from Carolina ain't too bad, to be very honest. If you're picking at 8, man, I'm praying that Ashton Genty's there. That's where we're going to start. I'm praying that Ashton Genty's there. I think I'd trade 8. Let me add to this hypothetical. Let's build it up a little bit more than what it is already. TJ to the Panthers, okay? You get pick 8, you get pick 57. You're on the clock there at 8. Teams are going to call. Teams are definitely going to call. They want somebody. Somebody's going to be there. Let's back up. Let's go back to maybe Ashton Genty's there. Steelers are very okay with moving back. Dallas Cowboys. Let's give them to Dallas. Let's send them to Dallas. Cool. They come up and get Ashton Genty. The Steelers trade back and get 12 and whatever. Maybe they add another third-round pick. Maybe they add a second-round pick. Who knows? You go at 12, I'm getting Matthew Golden. Then maybe I'm getting Kenneth Grant. I'm feeling pretty okay about Kenneth Grant or Derek Harmon there. I think I'd go Kenneth Grant at, let's say, 12. 21, I'm going, like you said, Golden, Abuka, Omari, and Hampton. Who's ever there? Feeling fine. You could draft a first-round running back with your second first-round pick. That's fine. That's all okay. And then at 57, Jalen Milroe or Caleb Johnson. I don't know if Jalen Milroe's there. I do think Caleb Johnson will be. Very okay with either one of those, and I think that works out very well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I truly do. And on top of that, you didn't give up George Pickens. You got to replace TJ Watt. And to be honest with you, if you took pick 8 and you didn't want to move it again, you could go Mykal Williams. You could do Mike Green and say, we need a dominant edge rusher. Let's go get him. I've heard their upsides some of the best in this draft class. I'm just saying it's a possibility, not saying it's likely, but just saying we could toss it out there. I like it. I think this hypothetical ain't terrible for getting rid of TJ Watt, which is a mat. Now, would I trade TJ Watt? No, but Dominic, I don't think you would either. But if this is the hypothetical, I'm not against it. I kind of like it. DKB 17, why don't we sign Jedrick Wills as a swing tackle? Honestly, I tossed this out there a couple of weeks ago. I said he's still available. I'm kind of stunned that he's still available. He's 25 years old. Don't get me wrong, he stinks. Like he's not very good, but he's 25 years old. He's a former, I want to say he's a first-round pick. If not, he's played like a first-round pick. He's out of Alabama. Like, I think the upside's there. The experience is there. Why wouldn't you take a shot on him? That's how I look. Why is Calvin Anderson okay to be a swing tackle, but Jedrick Wills isn't? I agree with you. I think that's where I stand on this. Is it would make sense if the Steelers went out and signed Chris Hubbard or Kelvin Beachum or whoever as their swing tackle and said, no, this is the big name we want. Calvin Anderson doesn't make sense to me. I mean, Calvin Anderson had one snap last year, wasn't that good. And I hope he's fantastic. I'm always pro player, but I don't think you're getting what you want in Calvin Anderson. I think possibly you're getting it in Jedrick Wills. I think it's there. I think it's maybe. I would take a shot on him. I bet you he costs absolutely nothing. The Steelers apparently are not in on him, and apparently neither is the rest of the league, which again, super surprising where we sit here today. Jake, ATP, I wouldn't have traded for DK and good D-line, Quinshawn. Oh, okay. I wouldn't have traded for DK Metcalf and go defensive line, Quinshawn Junkins, Jack Beck or Higgins and Howard in the 4th. I don't think Higgins, I think Jack Beck is going to be there at, what would that be, 83 in the 3rd round? I think that's a possibility. I don't think that Higgins is going to be there. I think he's a 2nd round pick. I think Quinshawn's a 2nd round pick. I think you could get him there if you're not trading DK in this situation. Defensive line in the 1st round is the easiest call you can make. It truly is. Anybody who's still sitting here arguing against it, come on. Like, it makes too much sense to go after the best position group possible and to get somebody that is guaranteed to be quality, or at least as close to a guarantee as possible to be quality. Like, that's what you're looking for if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, is quality, top-tier talent that is going to last 10 years. That's what you want. And defensive line is the position to go get that in this draft. I'd go Quinshawn Junkins in the 2nd if the Steelers had him. He won't be there in the 3rd. Jack Beck, I like Jack Beck a lot. And obviously, thoughts and prayers to his family. And I thought it was awesome to watch his pivot stuff. And I didn't watch the whole episode, but I saw all of the clips all over social media, him talking about Tiger and everything else. And I think that's sick. Jaden Higgins is a monster in my head. I think that dude's phenomenal. I don't think he's as good as like a Buka or Matthew Golden, obviously, but I do think he's the beginning of that next tier. Howard in the 4th, I'd go to. I like Will Howard. And I think Will Howard in the 4th makes a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chris, trade back, draft a defensive tackle, use the picks we gained to draft a quarterback, use the 3rd to pick a running back, and that is the perfect draft. Chef's kiss. I trust Omar for the win. I think that's a good spot. Here's a hiccup that I'm going to toss out there that I know nobody wants to hear. I know nobody wants to hear hiccup. Okay. But I don't know. You'd have to trade back at least 5 picks to probably get a 2nd round pick. And obviously at that point, it's a very late 2nd round pick. But I think that's what you're going to have to do there if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think you could trade back 2 spots with the Houston Texans and end up with a 2nd round pick. I think you're getting a 4th, maybe a 3rd round pick if that's the trade scenario. But I do think if you traded back multiple spots, you could potentially acquire a 2nd round pick. Maybe you'd have to give something up, but I think it could work. I do. I don't know who's going to trade back, but again, the Houston Texans said they're open to it. The Cleveland Browns said, hey, the New York Giants want to move up and get a quarterback. Hey, why don't you come all the way up to 21? Ain't nobody going to jump you. If you're taking the Steelers pick, we'll tell you, if I'm Omar Khan, I'm on the phone saying, all right, well, I'm either going to take Shedeur Sanders or you're going to come trade with me. That's the options right here. What do you want? What one are you looking for? You looking to draft Jackson Dart? You're looking to make a move and move up to 21. I agree. I think that there will be options at defensive tackle. I don't know if the Steelers are going to be all in on those options. I think that they'll kind of look at it and say, is Derek Harmon still on the board? Is Kenneth Grant still on the board? Those are the guys we want. We're going to pick one. Now, if everybody's still there, they'll adjust. But I do love this. I do think that if we could say perfect draft, this is a good one. This is a very good one. Come tomorrow night. Marlon Lewis Noah, and for those of you who didn't check out the AST Collins show today, go check that out on our YouTube channel. Marlon had a good one. I rebutted it, but he's, we're going to clear it up here. No, my call was before I bought into Milroe. With that said, if Shedeur falls, in theory, does that make Milroe in the 3rd more likely? The answer is no. And I know people say, why? Because there's going to be a run of quarterbacks. At some point, there's going to be a run of quarterbacks. I would not be shocked if that run of quarterbacks is the 1st round and Shedeur goes 3rd and Jackson Darko's 9th, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are saying, oh, God, we need a quarterback. What's going on? Or another team's freaking out and they do the same thing. A run of quarterbacks is going to happen. I don't know when it is. But if it starts at 21, or let's say worse than that, let's say it starts second pick of the third round, and then the Giants go third pick of the second round. Sorry, second round. Second pick, second round. Third pick, second round. Milroe's right there. I still think somebody takes him in the second. I just there will be a run. The only way that Milroe falls to the third is if Tyler Shuck goes ahead of him, Will Howard goes ahead of him, Quinn Ewers, who's a real possibility, goes ahead of him. There has to be at least 2 quarterbacks that we didn't see coming, jumping Jalen Milroe for him to make it to the third. I think that's the only way that he gets out of here and could make the Pittsburgh Steelers, could be an option for the Pittsburgh Steelers at 83. Maddie, happy draft eve. What is the likelihood that if Shedeur falls to 21, we grab him? Seems like he is Tomlin's guy, don't you think? I do think Tomlin likes him. I also think that Tomlin followed that statement with like a classic Tomlin, which, like, I mean, this is a great point, Maddie. Like, I look at it and go, Tomlin said all these great things about Shedeur Sanders, and then followed that up with, yeah, we love to create smoke screens. And you're thinking, was Shedeur a smokescreen? Was you saying you like creating smoke screens, the smoke screen to block that you like Shedeur, or what's going on? Mind games, man. Mind games. I would say what's the likelihood of Shedeur ending up in Pittsburgh if he's there at 21 is a coin flip. And that is because it depends on if Kenneth Grant's there, if Derek Harmon's there, if Matthew Golden's there, if, oh man, for some crazy reason, Mason Graham falls that far. Like, it depends on who else is around the Pittsburgh Steelers. If Shedeur Sanders is the best name on the board in a position that the Steelers need, they'll probably take him. If there are others and those other options are there, I don't think they would. I think that they would go in a different direction and trust the process of waiting on a quarterback before going to get somebody a little bit earlier. All right, let's keep it trucking here. Darian, we just traded for a wide receiver and we would be back at square one like last year. Look at, I agree. And I don't think trading George Pickens is the move that anybody should be making right now. I personally think that if you're trading George Pickens, you're trading him in July for next year's second round pick or maybe more, and you're getting some sort of wide receiver in return. That's my thoughts on trading George Pickens. Do I think it happens? Inevitably, yeah, I think it does happen. I do think that at some point there is a crossroads where the Steelers have to say, George, we don't have the money to sign you. We're sorry. And George says, all right, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. Now, if the Steelers are willing to cough up that money, totally different situation. But the Steelers are not a team that coughs up money. So I have a hard time thinking that that's how that's going to go down. But I agree with you. I do think it sets them back. I think in the NFL draft, unless you're going to use the George Pickens pick, the trade that you just made on a wide receiver, it only hurts you. It only hurts you. Vic, you've been asking this for 2 days. Noah, should we be nervous that Jaylen Warren hasn't signed his second round contract yet? I am glad that you tossed it in today because I caught it late yesterday and he signed it during the show. So he signed. They're good to go. Jaylen Warren is here. Signed it yesterday afternoon right before we jumped on here. He is good to go. All right. Keeping it trucking here, making sure I don't miss anybody as we go through this. Ooh, is there a world where the Steelers can take on money for Kirk Cousins and get draft capital from the Falcons? That is a great question. Can they take on money and get, so essentially you're saying, and I think I tossed this out here a couple of months ago, but I'm so glad that you have the same thought. Can the Steelers essentially say, we'll take on a chunk of Kirk Cousins' ridiculous contract for you to give us draft capital? I love that idea. I do. I think the Steelers are in a spot right now where you could call the Falcons and say, yeah, dude, we'll take $35 million of Kirk Cousins deal, and we'll give you a 6th round pick. We want a 4th. I think that's a possibility. I really, truly do. Kirk Cousins is set to make, I think it's like $37 million or something this season. I could be wrong here, but it's the largest backup contract in the history of the NFL. They're not going to keep that. They're going to get rid of Kirk Cousins. I think the Steelers could call and say, we'll take on X amount of money. We'll pay his full contract this year. We want a 4th round pick. And the more money you take on, the more draft capital you're getting from Atlanta. Do I think that's a possibility? Yes. Do I think it's likely? Probably not. Am I on board for it? Yeah, I think it's the best option for the Steelers is to say, we have excess money. Why not give it to Kirk Cousins? Because even if you sign George Pickens this year, it doesn't increase your salary cap that much. Even if you sign TJ Watt this year, doesn't do anything to your salary cap. You're looking at a year from now for TJ Watt. If anything, it's going to lower it. Maybe you have excess cash that you could give up because you were chasing Aaron Rodgers, and maybe that's the situation. I'm just saying. I think that is. I like this. I like this train of thought. I do. All right, let's keep it trucking here. Colton, hypothetically, trade George to Tennessee for that early 2nd, and also trade back and get a later 1st and 2nd, so we can have a 1st and 2 seconds. I don't know if all of that is possible. I will say Tennessee at the start of the 2nd round could be an option. I think that New England at the start of the 2nd round could be an option. I think that Chicago at the start of the 2nd round could be an option. Carolina at the start of the 2nd round could be an option. Who else is up there that I'm missing here? Vegas at the start of the 2nd round could be an option. There are going to be names there. New York, probably not, but I mean, what are their real thoughts on Darius Slayton? That's the question mark there. Just maybe. Carl Spackler, 121 to the Giants for 32 and 65. Keep in mind, Grant will still be there at 34, and we get an additional 3rd. If Grant's going to be there at 34, sure, that's awesome. But, I mean, I was talking to a guy in San Francisco yesterday that covers the 49ers who said that Kenneth Grant is probably going to go at 11. I was like, oh, okay. Well, there goes Kenneth Grant. If Kenneth Grant's there at 34, all about it. I mean, I would trade back. If Kenneth Grant is the pick, no matter where you trade back, I'm about it, because Kenneth Grant is my pick at 21. So if you get him at 34, that's just a bonus because you just added another 2nd and another 3rd. That's great. Fantastic. I love it. I love the hypothetical. I think that one works awesome. I think the Giants are a team to watch. I'm not going to say it's likely because that's a big jump, but I do think Omar is smart enough to get whoever his name is in New York on the phone and say, look, dude, we're either taking a quarterback or you're coming to get one. And those are your options. And I would like that. I would like that. Marlon, would you move George and let's say a 3rd next year for the Bears' 2nd round picks for both of them? I honestly, I think I would. I think I'd be okay with that. I think you could get a quarterback or a running back. And if you end up with a wide receiver and a running back in the 2nd round and you just had to give up George Pickens at a 3rd next year, I'm not saying that wide receiver turns into George Pickens, but I'm saying that you did the right thing. You made an educated risk that maybe could work out in your favor. I do. I like that pick. I think both of Chicago's 2nd round, I don't know where they pick after 10, but I like those picks, and I do think it could be worth it. I'd go wide receiver, running back in that situation, maybe quarterback if Jalen Milroe's there, but I think you could potentially get a Trey Henderson and Jaden Higgins, and that would be huge long term for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is there a quarterback in this draft that is currently better than Mason Rudolph? If we were win now, then get a player at 21 that makes you better. There are probably three three quarterbacks in this draft that are better than Mason Rudolph. That is Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. There are 4, 5, maybe 6 quarterbacks who have higher upside than Mason Rudolph, and that is Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shuck, maybe Will Howard, and then there's the you just never know in Kyle McCord and Quinn Ewers. So I think that's the case there, but I'll say this. I don't think that I think there's one quarterback in this draft that is 2. And one of them is Jalen Milroe, so he doesn't really count. But I think Cam Ward is the only quarterback in this class that I would take with expectations of becoming a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I think that would be where I stood. The other one's middle to bottom half of the starters, and I don't think it gets much crazier than that as we sit here today. All right, let's keep it trucking here. Looking for more. A lot of Mason Rudolph defenders as we move through this, and I got to say, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I hope at some point it works out for Mason Rudolph. Speaking of, what was the point of signing Mason with no real intel to use him or intent to use him? I mean, he's a backup quarterback. He's been a backup quarterback. I hear what the question is, but think about it from the other side. You know, if Aaron was when Mason Rudolph signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, nobody thought he was going to be the starter. He was the backup plan for Aaron Rodgers. He's still the backup plan to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers just hasn't signed yet, and people are starting to become impatient. That's the only difference. That's the only difference. The Steelers never at any point signed Mason Rudolph with the intent of he is our starting quarterback 100%. They signed him as a backup, hoped he was going to be a backup, also understood the situation and still do understand the situation that maybe worst case scenario happens and he's the starter. But that's a worst case scenario in the Steelers' eyes. No, bro, I may have missed it, but is there any way we are hoping to draft Matthew Golden or Terrion McMillan, someone like that in round 1 and trade George for day 2 capital? I think both of those names are there for the Steelers. I've heard the Steelers are less into McMillan than they are Matthew Golden or even Emeka Ibuka. I've heard a couple of teams that kind of feel the same way about this. McMillan's got weird draft stock on him right now. But I would say Matthew Golden is a name to watch in 21 if he's there. I think McMillan's a name to watch if he's there at 21. I think Ibuka is a name to watch if a lot of others are off the board at 21, but still there. I think that's a possibility. Trading George, if you're going to trade George for a second round pick, you should get a wide receiver. Like, that's how I view it. If you're going to trade George for a day 2 pick, go get a second round wide receiver. That's the only way you could make that happen and feel okay about it. I would do that if I was Omar Khan and I was forced to make the trade. Dominic, pick 21 of the Giants for their second and sexy. Oh man, if you could somehow pull that off to get Dexter Lawrence, and if this is who we're talking about, and their second round pick, I mean, you just pulled off the greatest trade of all time, but it wouldn't happen. But I mean, I love it, and I think it would be pretty cool. Could how the draft unfolds also impact George Pickens? Let's say McMillan fell to 21, for instance. Yes, definitely. I think that's how this is going to go down. I don't think Thursday is a big trade George Pickens day. And just like everybody's trying to hold back on their reports saying, well, you know, they're not actively shopping him, but if the right offer presented itself, that's what the Steelers are doing, is they are protecting themselves for the long-term situation because they have no idea how this is going to shake out. And if it shakes out in their favor, they get aggressive. If it doesn't, they protect themselves. That's what they're doing. So yeah, McMillan and how the board shapes out on Thursday could definitely impact that. If McMillan's your best bet and Kenneth Grant, I still think they'd take Kenneth Grant and all these defensive tackles over McMillan or Matthew Golden. But let's say they end up with McMillan or Golden. You could probably bet George is gone within the next 24 hours. You could almost make that a guarantee that he would be gone. I do think the board impacts heavily how the Steelers are going to look at this situation. Noah, can you explain anything about GP? Omar said that they aren't trading him. Does that mean he's playing on his rookie deal this year, or are they trying to talk about a deal? I do think that they are trying to figure out a deal, but they understand that right now they are not negotiating a deal, and they have not started negotiating a deal. And when that comes, chances are they're not going to have much money to toss George Pickens' way if they started at all, because they just signed DK Metcalf. So they want him to finish out the last year of his deal. They understand, like everybody else understands, that might not happen. He might not be okay with that. If he's not, they will move on. And I think that's where they stand when it comes to all of the rumors and the speculation that he will be gone at one point during the draft. Thomas, if Sanders falls to pick 20 and the Clowns trade up to get him, I'm going to laugh so hard. Trade back and land. Oh, trade back with LA and get Grant and a 3rd round pick. I think LA is a good landing spot, depending on if they're willing to come up for whatever reason. I think Omari and Hampton can be that reason with LA, because they signed Najee to a 1-year deal. They're not tied to that guy long term. And that was not starter money. It was, you are our starter money. To get Grant and a 3rd, I like that. I do. If you could get Kenneth Grant, if you could get whoever you were aiming for at 21, at 27, 26, 25, whatever, all about it. All about it. I have no issues moving back. I think it's very, very smart for the Pittsburgh Steelers. LA is a team. Again, I think it would come. I think it would come for Omari and Hampton, maybe a Matthew Golden, maybe a McMillan if he's there. It would have to be that offensive threat that really makes the team go, we got to go get him, and then go and pursue it. Stephen Cornfield, okay, Noah. So let's say Aaron doesn't sign. Kirk isn't leaving Atlanta, and there's no other bad idea veterans to bring in. What then do we do for our 4th QB spot, assuming we get a 3rd in the draft? You sign Carson Wentz. You sign all right. You want to be real? You want to get crazy with it? You go and trade for Will Levis. You call Detroit about Hendon Hooker. You call Green Bay about Malik Willis and say, what you guys got going on? What's the cheapest I could get this quarterback for? And let's have a conversation about it. I don't know, maybe do the same with the Jets and say, Tyrod Taylor, what can we get him for? How much can we go get him for? You go try to trade for Jameis Winston. I mean, there are many bad idea veteran quarterbacks still out there that the Steelers could and likely will pursue if Kirk Cousins says no. But that won't happen till July. It won't happen till the end of July. Aaron Rodgers needs to not be in the building when these guys show up in Latrobe, and nobody else needs to be in the building except for Mason Rudolph, a mid-round rookie, and Skylar Thompson before they go out and they make a real dumb call. But for right now, they're going to wait it out. They're going to wait it out. I love that question. I appreciate it. Great hypothetical here from Greg. If we get Sanders, would his dad coach the DBs? You'd only hope. But I think he's making, I want to say it's $5 million a year at Colorado. I don't think you're getting that as a defensive backs coach in Pittsburgh. Maybe 500 grand, but I don't even think it'd be that, to be honest with you. So probably not, but would be awesome. Go get Shiloh Sanders and then try to convince Dion to get here. I'd like that one too. Noah, why has there been almost no talk about Cam Scatterbo? Am I overrating this dude? But he looks like a Steeler to me, like a throwback Steeler. Okay, I think Cam Scatterbo is rising up boards, and I think somebody's going to draft him in the 3rd or 4th round. I think the Steelers could be that team. I do. I don't think I'm super high on him, to be honest. I think he's taken a lot of blow to his body. I think that he doesn't have the breakaway speed that the Steelers are looking for. I don't think long-term he is an every down back that Pittsburgh would like to find in this draft. But I do think he's a playmaker, and I do think he comes up with a lot of good plays, and I do think he's exciting to watch. And I do know that there are teams that have significant interest in this guy. I think Denver is more likely to get him. I think New Orleans is more likely to get him. I think Dallas is more likely to get him. The LA could be more likely to get him. There are teams that in that third round are going to be looking at Cam Scatterby going, that's our guy. I don't know if the Steelers are going to do that. They want more of an explosive presence. He's explosive, but I don't think he's got the breakaway potential in the NFL that the Steelers are looking for where we stand right now. Unlimited Moonballs with another one. We are trade central here today. 21 for Dak Prescott. Oh. Look, this is the first time that I can't say no. I can't say that's a bad idea. Do I think Dak wins you a Super Bowl? I think he gives you a much better chance than Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. I'll tell you that much. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I don't want to pay a quarterback $60 million a year. I think that's ridiculous. I really, truly do. But I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I'd be okay with it as long as you can make the money work. But that means you're not signing George Pickens. It means that TJ Watt's going to be a hassle to keep. It means that you are not going to get a quarterback anytime soon. I don't know. I like it. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I do think it comes with some complications, some really big ones. Oh, we're getting staticky. Some really big ones, but I do not hate the situation. I truly don't. Grayson the Ginger. Hey, Noah, is a second round pick really worth trading for GP? Surely they can ring Chase if they get a good quarterback to throw to GP Muth and Metcalf. If the O-line improves, they could compete with anybody. I agree. I do think a second round pick is what you're going to get for George Pickens. I think that's going to be the best you're going to get right now, just from what I've heard. The way I look at George Pickens is the Steelers are saving face because they understand exactly what you just said, that they can go get a Super Bowl and have a Super Bowl competent team if everything clicks and they find a quarterback, and George Pickens and DK Metcalf are still here. But they also are fully aware that they don't want to sign and spend money on two wide receivers. And if that's the case, they don't want George causing a ruckus in July and them having to move him then. So I think a lot of it is precautionary. They understand the situation long term and how realistically it's going to shape out. And if they can figure out now how to solve that, they will, but it's got to be worth their while. If they can't, then they'll try to keep them and they'll see what happens in July. But I don't think anybody has the expectation George is going to walk in, be totally fine with not getting a deal, and understand that a year from now he's gone. I don't think that anybody has that expectations. ND Joe, with the chaos building and about to kick off tomorrow, how about we all just sit and take a deep breath? We won't have any control over the fire hose of information aimed at us and take it in stride. That is a PSA to everybody. Williams here. They should just treat this year as the last Tommy Maddox year before they go and get their Ben, load up on the draft, and move forward with Mason. They want to, but they want it to be Aaron Rodgers. And then they want next year to be their quarterback year. I'm telling you, that's how they feel. They feel very confident in next year's quarterback class. If something arises this year, and I'm telling you, Mike Tomlin likes Shedeur Sanders, maybe, just maybe, that is the situation that presents itself and they change course. But they would like Aaron Rodgers to be the guy that comes here one last year, gives it everything he's got. They try to win a Super Bowl. They don't pull it off. And next year, they go get their guy. And their guy being probably not Arch Manning, but maybe Arch Manning and somebody else. Grayson the Ginger, hey, no, I got another one for you. In a hypothetical world, what could the Steelers get for TJ? How much could they really squeeze out of a team? I think you could get, I think I think if you are the Steelers and you're trading TJ Watt today, you can get a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and maybe a fourth. I do. I don't think you're going to get 2 seconds. I don't think you're going to get 2 firsts. I think you're going to get a first, a second, and a fourth. I think you're going to get multiple picks, and that's going to look bad because if TJ was on the block, immediately the word around town would be multiple first-round picks for TJ Watt. That's not how this would happen. It's not how it would go down. First, second, probably a fourth. That would be my guess. All right. Going through here, making sure I don't miss anybody as we round this one off here. All right, we'll go to Stephen Cornfield next. Noah, you're a dog. You're a dog, Stephen. I appreciate you. That said, showtime tomorrow. I'm getting staticky again. StreamYard's having a rough day. Tomorrow we're going live at 4. Sticking it out, 4 o'clock, ready to rock. I will say this to you guys, okay? I got a dentist appointment in the morning where I got to get some caps filled or whatever, some teeth fixed, because remember when I broke my tooth? For anybody who does remember, when I broke my tooth a couple of weeks ago, got it fixed by a Sunday dentist. I gave him a shout out. Thank God I didn't remember his name because it hurts. It's very painful. So I'm going to get it actually fixed tomorrow morning. I totally forgot to ask if I'm going to be all loopy, and we'll see what happens. But I think work's getting done at 8 a.m. We're on here at 4 o'clock. We'll be fine. We're trucking through it. Be me, a lot of you guys talking all NFL draft. I'm super excited to dive into all the questions that you guys have. So bring them, please. And we'll finish it off with a bang. Steven's got another one here. Noah, if Rodgers doesn't sign and we don't get Kirk, we get our third QB in the draft. Who's still left as I apologize. All right. We'll go Marlon Lewis here. If we see teams go DT heavy and we don't have any viable first-round defensive tackles, what would be your pick? I would probably that's tough. I think Matthew Golden would be a pick for me. I think Ben Morrison out of Notre Dame would be a pick for me that the Steelers have shown a lot of interest. I hope that Or I would guess that maybe Omarion Hampton is there, and I'd be okay with that. Nicky Muwari's there. If I had to rank them in order, ideal, can't get a defensive tackle, who are you going to get? Matthew Golden's number 1. This one's crazy, but Nicky Muwari's number 2. I think that guy's insane. Ben Morrison's number 3. Emeka Ibuka's number 4. I think that's where we're at right now, where if everything went perfectly, that's what I'm looking for. No, I guess not perfectly, but then perfectly everywhere else. Claude Bishop, Noah, grade the Steelers offseason so far. D+ for me. Oh, yeah, probably close. I think they did some good, some bad. But, yeah, I think a D is, I would say like a C. C right on the dot there is where they're at. They totally butchered the quarterback situation. I think did better in the running back room than I thought they were going to. I like the Jalen Warren move for cheap, and Kenneth Gainwell I think is a good backup running back. I truly do. DK Metcalf trade for a second-round pick would look awesome if you didn't piss off TJ Watt and had a quarterback, but seems like those are both massive negatives. Still haven't signed TJ Watt, and he's pissed off about it. That's a massive – we're going downhill real quick on this grade. Oh, what else have they done? I like Juan Thornhill. I like Juan Thornhill a lot, actually. I like moving on from Larry O. I think that's a good move. Darius Slayton's okay. Would have went a little bit bigger, but Darius Slay's okay. And I think that's it. Am I missing something? I feel like we're good there. I would go C. I think all around maybe a C+, but I think the good ones, the Darius Slay, Juan Thornhill, the DK Metcalf trade, which I think for a second-round pick, I like, don't outweigh the negatives. Pissing TJ Watt off and not having a quarterback in the midst of a DK Metcalf trade. What are you doing? Butchering the quarterback situation as a whole, massive negative. Getting an older corner instead of a younger corner, I'm not a fan of. Yeah, I would say C, maybe a C+ in my eyes, but I don't think you're getting any better than that. All right, we'll finish it off with this one. Unlimited Moonballs. The starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025 is, drum roll please, Aaron Rodgers. And I know nobody wants to hear Aaron Rodgers. I know we let out a bunch of on that one. I get it. Phone call yesterday. Yo, what's going on? Nothing. What's up with you? How you been? Good. Just checking in before the draft. Seeing if there's any movement. Nope, no movement. Steelers are still pretty confident that at some point they're going to end up with Aaron Rodgers. But things have gotten a little bit dark since the Pat McAfee show, and, they're just kind of coasting it out. All right, awesome. Sounds good. Click, boom. Aaron Rodgers, man. My guess is Aaron Rodgers. It's going to remain Aaron Rodgers. I don't see how it changes unless they go out and get a quarterback this weekend. And if that's the case, I'm totally wrong. But where we sit here today, it is Aaron Rodgers. All right. With that said, guys, I'm heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to me on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check me out anywhere you get your podcast. We're bumping that number up. We're at 4.4. So go to Apple Podcasts, look up All Steelers Talk, hit that download button, and hit the 5-star review for me, please, as we approach this draft weekend. Make sure to find all my work, my written work, at si.com/NFL/Steelers. And like I said, I will be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. normal time. We'll dive into everything possible before I head down to UPMC Rooney Sports Complex in the South Side to begin draft coverage for the Pittsburgh Steelers. With that said, it's a beautiful one outside, and I hope everybody gets to enjoy it. I'll see you tomorrow. NFL Draft Eve. NFL Draft kicks off in less than 27 hours. Got to be pumped. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.